If you ignore that pain for one more hour, she could lose her life. That sentence did not belong here. Not under chandeliers strung like constellations. Not in a place where every glass shimmered with $3,000 champagne and laughter had a price tag. Not on the 58th floor of the Aurora Crown Hotel, where the city's billionaires were busy raising money for children's health. Between courses plated like art. Yet it came, sharp and uninvited, slicing through the soft hum of jazz and the sound of 1,000 whispered deals. Michael Reyes didn't mean to speak. He wasn't supposed to. Janitors weren't part of the orchestra up here. They were the silence between notes. He had been mopping the corridor that connected the Aurelia Sky Lounge to the private VIP suites. Head down, steps quiet, invisible in his gray uniform. When the door to Suite 5803 opened and a small figure stumbled out. A girl, 8 maybe, face pale as porcelain, one hand pressed to her right side, breathing shallow. The maitre d' saw her first and smiled the way people do when a guest's child interrupts a dinner worth $100,000. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" But Michael froze. There was something in that stance. The way her shoulders curled inward, her lips pale, the small, trembling hand clutching her abdomen, that dragged him back years. Back to a night in Queens, sirens screaming, his daughter Sophia gasping for breath in his arms. He dropped the mop. The girl's mother appeared seconds later, Evelyn Cho, the Evelyn Cho, wrapped in silver silk and authority, the kind of woman whose presence rearranged the air. Cameras were following her from inside the lounge. Her smile was perfectly calibrated, even as she bent toward her daughter. "Aria, sweetheart, what's wrong?" The girl whispered something. Michael couldn't hear, but he saw her wince again. Low, right side. He took one step forward. "Excuse me," he said softly, voice tight. "That's not nausea. That's rebound tenderness." The hotel physician, an older man in a white coat that gleamed too clean, appeared at Evelyn's side. "Likely just a sugar dip," he said quickly. "She skipped dinner. Happens all the time at this altitude. I'll have some juice sent up." Michael's jaw tightened. He'd heard that tone before. Polite, dismissive, dangerous. The tone that had cost a boy's life years ago when he'd been an EMT and a family refused hospital transport because he just fainted. He crouched, gently meeting the girl's eyes. "Sweetheart, does it hurt more when you move or when I press?" "Don't touch her," the hotel doctor warned. But Aria nodded faintly. "When I move." Michael looked up. Right lower quadrant, guarding reflex, pale, clammy skin. She's past early stage. This isn't sugar. The manager rushed over, whispering urgently, "Sir, please. Guests only beyond the curtain." A guard placed a firm hand on Michael's shoulder. "Staff, stay back." Michael didn't move. His voice stayed low, but it carried the authority of someone who had once commanded triage in chaos. "If you ignore that pain for one more hour, she could lose her life," he repeated. Silence fell. Even the jazz from the lounge seemed to hesitate. Evelyn's smile faltered, not because she believed him, but because something in his tone cracked through her composure. For a heartbeat, she wasn't a billionaire, not the CEO of Cho Global, not a woman used to running empires. She was a mother. The doctor shifted uncomfortably. "We can monitor her here, Mrs. Cho. No need to alarm the guests." Michael's gaze didn't waver. "Appendicitis can rupture without warning. Monitoring doesn't save lives, moving does." The guard tried to steer him back toward the service door. Michael's hand brushed the worn edge of the small notebook sticking from his pocket, the one he'd kept since Sophia's diagnosis. Pages of scribbled symptoms, vital signs, what to watch for when the heart murmurs deepened. He remembered the helplessness of waiting for someone else to care enough to act. He straightened. "You can throw me out," he said quietly, "but you'll lose minutes you don't have." A tremor ran through Evelyn's fingers as she glanced at her daughter again. The shallow breaths, the sheen of sweat near her temples. And for the first time that night, she stopped thinking like a hostess and started thinking like a mother on the edge of fear. The room seemed to tilt. Beneath the glamour, beneath the thousand eyes pretending not to see, one truth pulsed louder than the music. Nobody here dared to speak the truth unless it was safe. But safety was running out. Evelyn turned toward him, her voice barely more than a whisper. "If you're so sure," she said, meeting his eyes across the polished marble, "then tell me, what do I do?" And that was the moment the night changed forever. "I built an empire by never panicking, but empires don't bleed. Children do." Evelyn Cho had sat in boardrooms where men twice her age shook when she spoke. She had walked into Silicon Valley as a first-generation Korean-American woman and bought companies that once said no to her father. She had closed a $4.3 billion acquisition while still in recovery from a C-section. She had flown from New York to Singapore to LA in 48 hours to stop a hostile takeover and did not let the jet lag show on camera. Her legend on the covers was simple: cold, brilliant, untouchable. But legends are written from far away. Up close, under the gold light of the Aurelia Sky Lounge, with her daughter's breath shortening, even a legend could crack. "Arya, look at Mommy," she whispered, steady but thin around the edges. "When did it start hurting?" Arya swallowed. "On the way here." "Before the elevator?" Arya nodded. "On the drive." The hotel doctor cut in, eager to reclaim control. "Travel fatigue. She has been to 3 events with you this week, Mrs. Cho. Kids get tired." Michael stood nearby, guarded on both sides now, mop abandoned behind him like an old life. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Travel fatigue isn't localized," he said. "Pain that keeps pointing to the same spot? That's not tired." The restaurant manager, a man in a charcoal suit that fit too perfectly, leaned toward the security guard and hissed, "Move him, now. We have investors from Dubai tonight. I don't want a scene in the corridor." That was the invisible enemy tonight. Not a villain with a gun, not an angry man, not a storm. It was something softer, more poisonous. The culture of not disrupting rich people's evenings. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder toward the lounge. She could see, through the open glass doors, the river of money continuing to flow. Men in tuxedos laughing, women in satin gowns, the quartet playing a Sinatra cover. At the far end, her guests from Dubai, the ones who were about to sign a media tech streaming deal across 2 continents, were waiting for her to come back with her signature smile. She was supposed to go back in. She was supposed to prove, once again, that she could be the woman who had it all: beauty, power, composed motherhood. But her daughter's fingers tightened around her wrist. Michael, sensing the hesitation that kills seconds, did what every good EMT does. He asked fast, specific questions. "When did the pain start?" "Exact time if you remember." Arya whispered. "In the car, like 20 minutes? Did it feel like a wave or a stab?" "Stab." "Does it get worse when you walk?" "Yes." "Does it hurt when you cough?" She tried. It did. Her eyes watered. Michael looked up at Evelyn. "Progressive pain. Movement aggravates. Guarding. She doesn't want to eat. Look at her lips. She's dehydrating. That's appendix until proven otherwise." The hotel doctor chuckled lightly, the way people in expensive buildings chuckle when they think they can laugh reality away. "You can't diagnose appendicitis in a hallway." Michael didn't smile. "No, but I can tell you what it looks like right before it bursts." The restaurant manager stepped forward, palms out. "Sir, staff are not permitted to." Evelyn raised a hand. The manager froze. She was thinking. Not as a CEO now, but as a woman who had spent the last 10 days believing her daughter had a stomach bug because Dr. Lang, the Park Avenue pediatrician who charged $2,000 an hour and flew to Cannes for her friends, had said it was nothing. 10 days, low fever on and off, eating less, complaining at night. And Evelyn had believed him, because it had been convenient to believe him, because she had a product launch, a board vote, and tonight, investors who wanted to see her daughter smile on camera. Guilt rose, metallic and hot. "Doctor," she said slowly, turning to the hotel physician, "you ran vitals when we arrived?" He looked offended. "Of course. Stable." "Did you palpate?" Michael asked. The doctor ignored him. "Children of this clientele often present with mild GI distress when traveling. That's not an answer," Michael said. The guard tightened his grip. "Enough." Michael exhaled once, sharply, like a man pushing back a memory. "I had a call in Jackson Heights," he said, eyes on Evelyn. 9-year-old boy, low fever, bellyache. Parents didn't want the neighbors to see an ambulance, so they said they'd wait and see. We lost him 2 hours later. You know why? He didn't wait. Because ruptured appendixes don't care that your life is busy. They don't care that you're hosting a fundraiser. And they definitely don't care that a hotel wants good press. The corridor fell quiet again. This, Evelyn realized, was what had unnerved her from the start. He was not trying to get attention. He wasn't filming. He wasn't begging. He was talking like someone who had seen death come stupidly, avoidably, because grown-ups chose reputation over speed. She looked down at Arya again. Her little girl's face was now beaded with sweat, the skin around the eyes slightly sunken, lips dry. She was breathing around the pain. "I can have an Upper East Side pediatric surgeon here in 20 minutes, the hotel PR manager offered, appearing as if conjured. "We have a doctor on Park Avenue." Michael shook his head. "And in those 20 minutes, she could perforate. Then you're not doing a clean appendectomy. You're fighting peritonitis." "Sir, we can do this quietly," the PR manager insisted, lowering her voice. "Mrs. Cho has very important guests. We can handle this in suite, discreetly." There it was, the real villain. Discretion over survival. Privacy over child. Image over pulse. Evelyn felt something inside her harden. She thought of the headlines that had dogged her for years. Steel Queen puts company before child. Cho seen in London while daughter sick at home. Is Evelyn too cold to mother? She had spent an entire decade proving them wrong with numbers, with growth charts, with acquisitions, with scholarships in her daughter's name. But she had never proved it with time. And right now, this janitor was telling her, in front of her own staff, that time was the only currency that mattered. The manager, sensing her wavering, nudged the guard again. "Take him back down to service. Mrs. Cho, we'll bring the doctor up." Michael looked straight at her. No apology, no fear. "If it bursts up here," he said, voice low but ringing through the marble, "PR won't save you. Only speed will." The words landed like a gavel. For a second, Evelyn saw the entire night from the outside, a billionaire preaching about children's health while her own child died slowly in a VIP corridor because no one wanted to call an ambulance on the 58th floor. She turned to the guard. "Let him stay." The guard hesitated. "Ma'am, this is against—" "Against whose policy?" Evelyn asked, eyes suddenly sharp, the CEO back in full. "Mine or yours?" No one answered. She bent, kissed Arya's forehead, and her voice was no longer for the cameras. "Okay, Mr. Reyes," she said. You've got my attention. Tell me exactly what we do next. The higher the floor, the quieter the truth. That was the unwritten rule of the Aurora Crown Hotel, and everyone who worked here knew it by heart. When something went wrong on a high floor, when a VIP fainted, when a child cried, when a heart stopped beating, it wasn't called a crisis. It was called a situation, and situations were meant to be contained, softened, and silenced before they reached the lobby. Tonight, that rule was being tested on the 58th floor. Michael Reyes could feel the tension thickening the air like humidity before a storm. The corridor outside Aurelia Sky Lounge glowed too softly, too politely, as if light itself didn't want to offend anyone. Every second that passed felt like betrayal. Evelyn Cho stood between two worlds, the private hallway where her daughter trembled and the ballroom where her investors laughed. She could still hear the music leaking through the gold-trimmed doors, a rhythm that mocked the panic building in her chest. The hotel's doctor spoke again, voice calm as silk. Mrs. Cho, I understand your concern, but our medical protocol is clear. All VIP health matters are handled in suite unless specifically escalated. Handled in suite. That was corporate language for keep it quiet. Michael's jaw tightened. He had seen it before, not in hotels, but in high-rise offices and gated communities, places where silence had more value than oxygen. He stepped forward. So your protocol is to wait until it's too late? Sir, the doctor said, lips thin, you are not part of this conversation. Evelyn didn't answer him. Her eyes had drifted to Michael's hand, calloused, steady, holding a small notebook worn from years of folding. The cover was faded blue, edges rounded by time. What's that? She asked. Michael hesitated, then handed it to her. Notes from when my daughter was born, he said quietly. She has a heart defect. I wrote down every sign I ever saw. What meant nothing, what meant everything. I missed one once. Never again. Evelyn turned the notebook over. Inside, tiny handwriting filled the pages. Heart rates, symptoms, emergency contacts, medication doses. The kind of obsessive care that came from fear, from love, from never wanting to stand helpless again. You were a doctor? She asked. Paramedic, he corrected. Queen's Emergency Medical Response. 10 years. Quit when Sophia needed more time than my shift could give. Evelyn blinked, the edges of her mascara smudging faintly. Something in that confession landed deeper than she expected, the weight of someone who chose his child over his title. The manager interrupted sharply, his voice low but urgent. Mrs. Cho, we cannot make a scene. The press is downstairs. If an ambulance shows up, it'll be all over page 6 by morning. Evelyn turned her head slowly toward him. And if my daughter dies up here quietly, will that be more elegant? The manager paled. I only mean... She's right, Michael cut in. Your system's built for image, not survival. The PR manager joined, clutching a tablet like a shield. Mrs. Cho, please. Just 30 minutes. We can bring in Dr. Lang from Park Avenue. He's treated Aria before. 30 minutes? Michael said. You don't have 30 minutes. He pointed to Aria, now curled slightly on her side, tiny fingers gripping her dress near the pain. Her pulse is faster. She's compensating. She's already in advanced inflammation. Once that appendix ruptures, the infection spreads fast. The hotel doctor sighed, the sound of arrogance meeting inconvenience. Sir, unless you have a medical license... Michael's eyes flared. I do. Expired last year. Evelyn looked between them, torn. The ceiling above them reflected the city, glittering, distant, oblivious. Down below, New York kept spinning, unaware that on the 58th floor, a mother was one decision away from ruin. A memory flashed. 10 days ago, Aria had complained of the same ache during a photo shoot. Evelyn had hushed her, promising a doctor later. Dr. Lang had said, "It's just gastritis." She had believed him, because it was easier than imagining something worse. Now that comfort was poison. Michael crouched beside Arya again, his tone soft as lullaby. "Hey, kiddo, you're doing great. Can you show me where it hurts most?" Arya pointed weakly. When he pressed near the lower right, she gasped and tensed, tears springing instantly. "Rebound tenderness," he murmured. "Positive sign." Evelyn's heart dropped. "Positive means bad, doesn't it?" He nodded. "It means you're out of time." The PR manager whispered into her earpiece, already typing. "Ma'am, if we move her now, the paparazzi—" Evelyn spun toward her. "Do you hear yourself? She's 8. Silence. The kind that made even the lights hum louder. Michael straightened, voice low but clear. "You can replace a headline," he said. "You can't replace a heartbeat." He didn't say it to sound poetic. He said it because he knew. Because 6 years ago, a boy in Queens had died in the back of an SUV while his parents debated whether to call 911. He still saw that boy in his sleep. The PR manager turned away, muttering to the manager, "She's emotional. Let's give her space." But Evelyn wasn't emotional. She was furious. Furious at herself for trusting prestige over instinct. Furious at this building for being a cathedral of pretense. Furious at a world that taught people like Michael to apologize for being right. "Get out," she said. The doctor blinked. "Mrs. Cho? You heard me? All of you? Out. Security, PR, manager, out." They hesitated, confused, until she added, "If you think I won't buy this hotel tomorrow, test me." The hallway cleared. Only 3 remained: Evelyn, Arya, and Michael. Evelyn knelt beside him, her voice trembling but resolute. "Show me what to do." He looked at her, the billionaire who commanded nations, now stripped to one simple truth: a mother terrified of losing her child. "First," he said, "we confirm what I think it is." He took a deep breath, wiping his palms on his uniform. His movements were methodical, practiced, gentle. "Hold her hand," he said softly. "We're going to make sure this pain isn't the kind you wait for." And for the first time in her life, Evelyn Cho didn't give an order. She obeyed. Truth doesn't scream in places built to impress. It whispers. And only those who've lost something before can hear it. The suite was suddenly too still. The soundproof walls of the Aurora Crown Hotel muffled even the city's pulse. Outside, New York glittered, rivers of headlights streaming across the Hudson. But in here, time hung like a held breath. Evelyn Cho stood frozen beside the bed, her gown whispering against the marble as she knelt beside her daughter. Arya's face had turned ashen. Tiny beads of sweat clung to her temples. Every inhale came shorter, shallower. Michael Reyes, kneeling at her side, spoke gently, the way people speak to frightened children and broken systems. "Mrs. Cho, I need you to keep her calm," he said. "We'll do this step by step." He washed his hands at the small sink, grabbed 2 towels from the hotel rack, folded one under Arya's head, the other across her abdomen. Every motion was practiced, quiet, human. Not a trace of panic. Only purpose. He leaned close to the girl, voice a whisper. "Hey, sweetheart. I'm Michael. I used to fix people for a living, but I need your help, okay? You're brave, I can tell." Arya nodded weakly. "Good. I'm going to touch your tummy. Just point if it hurts too much." Her tiny fingers trembled as he pressed lightly on her upper left side. Nothing. Then the middle, a flinch. then the lower right. She gasped, body tensing, tears springing fast. Michael's tone didn't change, but his eyes darkened. Rebound tenderness confirmed, guarding reflex too strong. She's past inflammation. She's near rupture. Evelyn's throat closed. What does that mean? He turned to her. It means we have minutes, not hours. The words hit harder than any investor's rejection, any headline, any boardroom battle. Evelyn had conquered markets, rewritten industries, survived betrayals that would have ended lesser people. But this helplessness before a small body in pain, she had no armor for it. The hotel's silence felt obscene. Michael checked her pulse, brow furrowing. Faster now, 140. He glanced at the clock, 9:17 p.m. If that appendix ruptures, infection spreads through the abdominal cavity. The peritoneum's not forgiving. Evelyn's voice shook. Then what do we do? Hospital, he said. Now. But the elevator... Then we take the service one. I'll carry her if I have to. Evelyn's instinct warred with training. She had been conditioned to delegate, to call experts, to control optics. But there was no delegation in motherhood, no PR shield when your child was shaking in your arms. She touched Aria's cheek, warm, damp, trembling. A scent rose from her hair, faint like sleep. And in that moment, Evelyn didn't see shareholders or screens. She saw the little girl who used to color outside meeting notes and call it helping mommy. Will it hurt her if we move? She whispered. Less than leaving her here, Michael said. Aria whimpered, curling tighter. Michael steadied her, hand gentle on her shoulder. You're okay, kiddo. You're brave. Just one small test left, okay? He looked at Evelyn. I'm going to press and release fast. If she cries harder when I lift, it's confirmation. Evelyn nodded, tears finally breaking the surface. He pressed, then lifted. Aria screamed. Evelyn nearly collapsed. The sound tore through her like lightning through glass, short, shattering, pure. Michael whispered, That's all I need to know. He looked up, eyes calm, voice firm. She's in acute appendicitis. You move now. She lives. Something in his tone, not begging, not commanding, just truth, broke through every wall Evelyn had built to survive the world of men who never took her seriously until she stopped crying. Now, she cried because she finally understood what mattered. Aria trembled against her lap. Mommy, my tummy hurts. I know, baby, Evelyn whispered. Mommy's got you. Michael cleaned his hands again, pulling a small penlight from his pocket, one he used for cleaning dim corners of the lounge. He shone it over Aria's pupils, then her lips. Slightly pale, dehydrated, mild jaundice. She's fighting an infection. He checked her skin, dry, warm, pulse thread-like. We're close to systemic spread. Evelyn tried to steady her breathing. If she ruptures? Michael shook his head. We don't think about that. We move. He looked at her one last time, eyes steady as stone. Do you trust me? She nodded before she could think. Yes. That word, yes, was heavier than any signature she had ever given. He rose, wiping his hands, ready to lift the girl. But something in Evelyn's face caught his attention, a flicker of distant grief. You've seen this before, haven't you? He asked softly. Evelyn's lips parted. My sister. Seoul, 1997. Same age. It burst before they got to the hospital. I still remember the color of her bedsheet. Michael nodded slowly. Then you know what hesitation costs. She swallowed hard. I won't hesitate again. Her voice trembled, but beneath it was steel. He gave a short nod, grabbed a hotel blanket, wrapped Arya carefully, supporting her back and knees like porcelain. As they turned toward the door, Evelyn whispered to herself, barely audible, "We're going to the hospital. Now." Her words seemed to echo, not loud but absolute, like a verdict passed in heaven. And for the first time that night, the silence of the five-star suite broke. Far below, the city's sirens began to rise, faint but real. The sound of motion, of urgency, of ordinary heroes breaking impossible rules. Michael's arm tightened around Arya. Evelyn walked beside him, hand never leaving her daughter's. As the elevator doors opened, the light spilled in. Harsh, unfiltered, honest. They stepped inside. Sometimes salvation doesn't look like light from above. It looks like an elevator that finally opens. The doors of the service elevator yawned wide, revealing a narrow cage of stainless steel and fluorescent hum. It wasn't made for billionaires in gowns or men carrying children. It was made for crates of wine, trash bags, and quiet labor. But tonight, it would carry something far rarer: truth-breaking protocol. Michael stepped in first, holding Arya close to his chest. She was lighter than Sophia, frighteningly light. Her head rested against his shoulder, breathing shallow, her dress damp with fever. Evelyn followed, silver gowns sweeping the grimy floor. She didn't care. When the doors began to close, a uniformed guard hurried forward. "Mrs. Cho, that elevator's restricted." "Open it," she said without turning. "Ma'am, it's for staff only." Her voice dropped, the kind that built and destroyed companies. "Open it, or I will own this building by morning." The guard hesitated. Then he pressed the override key. The elevator doors sealed shut behind them. For the first time since the night began, there was silence. Not the expensive kind, but the real kind. The sound of fear and faith sharing the same breath. Michael shifted his weight, keeping Arya steady. Her eyes fluttered. "It hurts," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. Almost there." He pressed the emergency phone, speaking fast. "This is Reyes, formerly EMT Queens 14. We have a pediatric female, 8 years old, acute appendicitis, likely rupturing. Need immediate access at street level, 58th Street side. Notify St. Catherine's ER. Pediatric surgeon on standby. ETA 5 minutes. Evelyn blinked. "You still remember the call codes?" "Some things don't leave you," he said. The elevator creaked, descending too slowly, every floor a lifetime. Evelyn clutched the rail, mind spiraling. "St. Catherine's," she murmured. "Is that far?" 8 blocks, Michael said. "I used to drive the ambulance there." Her chest tightened. "Will they listen to you?" "They will when they hear my name. They remember the kid I lost." The way he said it, quiet, scarred, made her glance at him differently. Not as a janitor, not even as a paramedic, but as a man who had lived too long with guilt that refused to fade. The elevator shuddered, pausing at floor 42. A bell chimed. "Elevator reserved for VIP transport," a digital voice warned. Michael slammed the emergency switch. "Override." The elevator obeyed. The descent resumed. Arya whimpered softly. Michael felt the tremor in her small frame, the subtle rigidity, peritoneal irritation. His hands tightened. Not again, he thought. Not another child because adults waited too long. He looked up at Evelyn. "She's close." Evelyn pressed her palm to her daughter's forehead, her diamonds catching the sterile light. "She's burning." Michael nodded grimly. Rupture's near. Fever spike means infection's spreading. We get her on antibiotics and into surgery now. She'll be okay. The words steadied her like prayer. Then, a sudden jolt. The elevator stopped at floor 27. Why are we stopping? Evelyn demanded. Michael hit the control panel. System freeze. Someone upstairs tried to regain control. Her eyes widened. They're locking us out? Not for long. He pried open the panel, pulling a screwdriver from his pocket. A janitor's reflex. He crossed 2 wires, sparks flaring, and the machinery groaned back to life. The descent continued. Evelyn exhaled shakily. You could have been an engineer. He smiled faintly. I clean up after them instead. At floor 12, Arya began to shake. Mommy, it hurts. Evelyn's voice cracked. Michael, she's okay. She's fighting. Hold her hand. The elevator lights flickered, and for a second, Evelyn saw them reflected in the steel walls. A billionaire in sequins, a janitor in gray, and between them, a child neither privilege nor poverty could protect. Different worlds, same heartbeat. The elevator hit the ground floor with a heavy thud. The doors opened to chaos. Paramedics in blue waiting beside an ambulance, gurney ready, red lights painting the lobby walls in pulses. Patient, female, 8, suspected ruptured appendix, Michael called out, already stepping forward. IV line, fluids, broad-spectrum antibiotics. Now. The ER lead, a woman in green scrubs, turned. Reyes? Her eyes widened. You're back? Not officially, he said, but you'll want to move fast. They transferred Arya to the stretcher. Evelyn followed, still barefoot from the suite, makeup streaked. Reporters at the far end of the lobby had begun to notice, cameras rising like a tide. Mrs. Cho, one shouted. Is it true your daughter? Michael moved between them instinctively, shielding the girl. Keep back! The ambulance doors slammed shut. Evelyn climbed in, trembling. Michael joined without asking permission. As the siren wailed and the city opened before them, he placed an oxygen mask over Arya's face, guiding the paramedic. Set flow at 4 liters. Monitor vitals every 30 seconds. The driver yelled, Traffic's heavy! Michael leaned forward. Use the left lane. I'll call ahead. He pulled his phone, dialing a number etched into his memory. St. Catherine's, emergency triage, Reyes. Tell Dr. Kumar to prep OR for pediatric appendectomy, possible rupture. We're 5 minutes out. The nurse on the other end gasped. Reyes, you're... No time, just be ready. He hung up, looked down at Arya, pale, eyes half closed. You're okay, kid. You're the bravest person in this city tonight. Evelyn stared at him through tears. How are you so calm? I'm not, he said softly. I just remember what it costs when you're not. The siren cut through the night. Outside, skyscrapers blurred into streaks of silver and red. In the back of the ambulance, Evelyn reached across the narrow gap and gripped Michael's hand. If she makes it, she will, he said firmly. Then I'll owe you more than my life. He shook his head. No one owes anyone for doing what's right. The driver called out, St. Catherine's in sight! Michael leaned close to Arya, whispering so only she could hear. Almost there, sweetheart. Almost. The ambulance swung through the emergency bay. The doors burst open. Nurses and surgeons swarmed the stretcher. Dr. Kumar, the ER chief, looked up in disbelief. Reyes? Thought you quit. Michael's voice cracked for the first time that night. Just couldn't quit caring. They rolled Arya into surgery, double doors slamming shut behind her. For a moment the corridor was empty again, sterile, humming, endless. Evelyn stood beside him, shaking, the sound of the monitors fading beyond the walls. Michael leaned back against the cold tile, breathing hard, staring at his hands, the same hands that had once failed to save a boy years ago. This time they had moved faster. Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "If she lives." Michael turned to her, gentle. "Then you'll both have another chance." The overhead light flickered, humming softly. The siren outside faded into nothing, and in that thin silence between fear and faith, something shifted, not just in the night, but in both of them. They had broken the rules of the five-star world, and because of that, a little girl might live to see morning. You can quit a job. You can't quit a memory that knows your name. The waiting room at St. Catherine's Hospital was lit by the pale blue glow of machines that never slept. Monitors beeped in the distance, steady as heartbeat metronomes. The world outside was still spinning, taxis, lights, sirens, but here, time had narrowed to the rhythm of one small surgery behind a white double door. Michael Reyes sat on the edge of a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tight until his knuckles turned white. His gray janitor uniform was streaked with elevator grease and faint blood smudges from carrying Aria. He hadn't moved in 40 minutes. Evelyn Cho stood near the window, back straight, arms folded as if posture could protect her. Her phone lay silent on the seat beside her, unread messages piling from assistants, reporters, partners. The empire waiting for orders from a woman who no longer had the strength to give them. In the fluorescent silence, Michael's voice broke first. "You don't forget the ones you lose," he said quietly. Evelyn turned. "What do you mean?" He rubbed his palms slowly together, as if still feeling someone's pulse there. 6 years ago, I was on a call in Jackson Heights, 9-year-old boy. Stomach pain. I was on shift. We could have made it. We were close. But then I got a message from home. My daughter Sophia's heart monitor had gone off. My wife had already left. She couldn't handle the hospitals anymore. It was just me and her. I had to choose. He paused. The air seemed to tighten. I called another EMT to cover me. Said I'd be gone 20 minutes. The other team got lost in traffic. The boy ruptured on the way. He didn't make it. Evelyn's throat went dry. "And Sophia?" His eyes softened, distant. "She made it. But every time I look at her, I see the face of the boy who didn't." He leaned back, staring at the sterile ceiling. "After that, I quit. I couldn't hold another life knowing I'd dropped one. I cleaned floors instead. Floors don't bleed. Floors don't call you in the middle of the night asking why you weren't faster." Evelyn lowered her gaze. Her hands were trembling, not from judgment, but recognition. "And yet tonight you ran toward it again." He nodded. "Because I promised Sophia I'd never ignore pain again. Not hers, not anyone's. She asks me every night before bed, 'Daddy, are you still listening to people's hearts?' He smiled faintly. I tell her yes, even if I'm just mopping near one." Evelyn swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "You saved my daughter because you couldn't save someone else." Michael shook his head. "No. I saved her because you listened." Those words hit her harder than any accusation could have, because he was right. She had spent her life being the one not to listen, to silence weakness, to dismiss hesitation, to perfect the image of composure. And tonight, that image would have cost her everything, if not for this quiet man who refused to shut up. The double doors burst open. A surgeon stepped out, mask lowered, eyes tired but kind. "Mrs. Cho?" Evelyn's heart stopped. "Yes?" "Appendix was inflamed and close to rupture, but we got it in time. No peritonitis. She's stable. She's going to be fine. Evelyn's knees buckled. The chair behind her caught her halfway down. For a second, she couldn't breathe. The kind of relief that feels like drowning. Her hand flew to her mouth, a small sound escaping, somewhere between laughter and prayer. Michael exhaled deeply, leaning forward, elbows on his knees again. His body finally allowed itself to shake. The doctor continued, smiling softly. Whoever brought her in, you did it just in time. Another hour and... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Evelyn turned toward Michael. Her voice trembled. You heard him? He nodded once. I heard. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't even know how to thank you. Don't, he said quietly. Just hold her hand when she wakes up. The surgeon added, You can see her soon. She's in recovery now. He left, leaving the two of them alone again. But the silence this time felt softer, forgiving. Evelyn sank into the chair beside Michael. For a long time, neither spoke. The world outside their little circle seemed irrelevant. Finally, she whispered, You know what the press will say? He smiled faintly. Probably that you were saved by your janitor. She let out a small, weary laugh. They'll never understand. They'll think it's scandal or sentiment, not what it really was. What was it? He asked. She looked at him, eyes clearer now. A moment when a man who cleaned my floors became the only person brave enough to clean my illusions. Michael blinked, startled by the poetry of it, and looked away. Through the glass door at the end of the hallway, nurses were rolling a small bed past. A pale hand with a hospital bracelet dangled over the side. Aria's. Her hair framed her face like a halo against the white pillow. Evelyn stood, pressing her palms to the glass. For a moment she didn't see the hospital, or the cameras, or the headlines. She saw her little girl breathing. And she thought of every night she'd missed a bedtime, every mommy look she'd ignored because the next meeting mattered more. She whispered, Never again. Michael rose slowly beside her. Go to her. She turned to him, hesitating. Will you come? He shook his head gently. Not yet. She needs her mother first. Their eyes met. Billionaire and Janitor, two people bound by something older than class, older than guilt, the memory of almost losing what truly mattered. Evelyn walked toward the recovery room door. Michael watched her go, his reflection merging with hers on the glass. Two silhouettes moving in opposite directions, but healed by the same act of courage. As the door closed behind her, he finally let out a long breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His phone buzzed softly in his pocket. A text from Sophia. Daddy, are you still working? The stars are out tonight. Don't miss them. He smiled. For the first time in years, his chest didn't ache with what-ifs. He typed back, I'm still listening, sweetheart. Always. Outside the hospital, dawn began to rise over the Hudson. Thin light brushing across glass towers that had no idea what had just changed within one of them. Michael leaned against the cold wall, eyes half closed, and let the quiet settle in. He had once thought redemption came from saving lives. Now he understood. Sometimes it comes from helping someone else remember what life is for. Grief built the walls between them. Love, quiet, undeserved, and ordinary, began to take them down. Morning light poured through the hospital windows like mercy. After the longest night of her life, Evelyn Cho found herself sitting on a hard wooden bench outside the pediatric recovery wing, stripped of everything that had once made her untouchable. No assistants, no makeup, no cameras. Just a mother waiting for her daughter's eyelids to flutter open. Across from her, Michael Reyes sat holding a paper cup of burnt coffee, steam curling around the deep lines under his eyes. His uniform was still stained, but his posture carried the strange stillness of someone who had already lived through worse and learned how to endure it. For a long time, neither spoke. The hallway was filled with muted sounds, the rhythmic hiss of ventilators, the shuffle of nurses, the faint laugh of a child down the corridor who'd survived something small but miraculous. When Evelyn finally broke the silence, her voice was hoarse. "You should have gone home hours ago." Michael looked up. "And miss seeing proof she made it? No chance." Evelyn smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach the lips but softened the soul. "You're a stubborn man, Mr. Reyes." He shrugged. "It's the only reason I'm still standing." Inside the recovery room, Arya slept peacefully, a faint flush back in her cheeks, the monitor beeping in steady rhythm, the sweetest music Evelyn had ever heard. She'd been allowed to stay the night beside her daughter's bed, but exhaustion had driven her to the bench when the nurses came for rounds. Now, with sunlight creeping across the floor, she could finally breathe. Michael noticed her fingers shaking slightly as she tried to lift the cup of coffee he'd brought her. He reached out without thinking, steadying her hand. "Careful." "That's jet fuel." Evelyn laughed, softly, unexpectedly. "I can buy a coffee plantation, and this is the best one I've ever had." He grinned, leaning back. "That's because you earned it." For a moment they sat like that, two worlds that were never meant to overlap, sharing silence as if it were sacred. Evelyn's voice grew quiet. "Do you ever stop hearing it?" "Hearing what?" "The moment you almost lost someone." Michael's gaze drifted toward the window, where dawn spilled over the skyline like a memory trying to heal. "No," he said finally. "But if you listen long enough, the sound changes. It stops screaming and starts teaching." She nodded slowly. "What did it teach you?" He hesitated, eyes soft. "That sometimes love is louder when you don't say it, when you just show up, even if no one sees you." Her throat tightened. "That's what you did last night." He looked away. "That's what any parent would do." Evelyn's eyes glistened. "No, you're wrong. Most people in that room didn't even look when she cried. They smiled for the cameras. They toasted to children's health while ignoring one right in front of them." She paused. "You didn't look away." Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I saw my daughter every time she flinched." A nurse entered quietly. "She's waking up," she said with a smile. Evelyn shot up, her exhaustion vanishing in an instant. Michael stood too, heart tightening. Inside, Arya blinked, eyes unfocused at first, then finding her mother. "Mommy?" Evelyn pressed her forehead to her daughter's, tears sliding freely. "You're okay, baby. You're safe now." Arya's small hand brushed her mother's cheek. "Did you cry?" Evelyn laughed through the tears. "Maybe a little." Then Arya's gaze moved past her mother, to Michael, standing by the door, hands tucked awkwardly into his pockets. "Is he the janitor who saved me?" Michael froze. He wasn't sure how to answer that. Evelyn turned, smiling through tears. "Yes, sweetheart. That's him." Arya's lips curved in a weak grin. "Thank you, mister." He knelt, voice thick. "You were the brave one, Arya. I just held the flashlight." She giggled faintly. "You sound like Daddy when he fixes things." Evelyn glanced down, her chest aching in a way that wasn't pain. It was something closer to gratitude. "He does fix things," she said softly. just not the kind people usually notice. Hours later, when Arya was resting again, Evelyn and Michael found themselves back on that same wooden bench. This time, sunlight drenched the hallway in gold. "Your daughter," Evelyn said. "Sophia, she must be proud of you." Michael's lips twitched in a smile. "She'd probably say I overreacted." "She'd be wrong," Evelyn replied, and they both laughed. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, the same worn one she'd seen at the hotel. He flipped it open to a blank page. The margins were filled with faint handwriting, dates, heart rates, and sketches of tiny hearts. "I've been writing things down since the day Sophia was born," he said. "Last night deserves a page, too." He began to write. 58th floor. Arya Cho, 8 years old. Signs: pale, rebound tenderness, tachycardia. Saved by seconds. Mother listened. Evelyn watched his pen move, her throat tightening again. "You document everything?" He nodded. "So I never forget the patterns of pain. Each one teaches me how to see better next time." After a moment, she whispered, "Then write one more thing." He looked up. Write that silence almost killed her. Michael's eyes lingered on hers, then back at the page. Slowly, he wrote the words in careful script. Silence, the real killer. When he closed the notebook, the moment hung between them like a pact. Outside, traffic murmured, life continued, but something invisible had shifted. A thread stretched between two lives that had collided by accident and stayed by choice. Evelyn looked at him one last time, her voice steady. "You're not invisible anymore, Michael." He smiled softly. "Neither are you." They sat there as morning deepened into day, two worlds that finally understood each other, resting on the same bench, bound by the smallest, truest act of all, someone cared enough to see. The most dangerous lies are the ones spoken softly, in boardrooms, in corridors, in white coats. Morning had turned into noon, and sunlight now streamed through the wide hospital windows like forgiveness. Arya was asleep again, a soft hum of machines at her bedside, her tiny chest rising and falling like the rhythm of a repaired world. But the room beyond that glass wall, the conference room on the same floor, was filled with tension. Because Evelyn Cho had summoned the people responsible for her daughter's silence. Around the table sat the hotel director, the PR manager, and Dr. Lang, the Park Avenue pediatrician who had insisted Arya's pain was mild gastritis. Each one looked immaculate, polished, terrified. At the head of the table, Evelyn sat in a plain blazer borrowed from a nurse's closet. No jewelry, no perfume. Just a mother whose patience had expired. "Thank you for coming," she began, voice calm, clipped, lethal. "I want to discuss how a system built to protect people like my daughter nearly killed her." Dr. Lang straightened, forcing a polite smile. "Mrs. Cho, I understand your frustration. Children often present with vague symptoms. Appendicitis can be fatal when ignored," she cut in. "And you ignored it for 10 days. He shifted. In fairness, Arya's symptoms were inconsistent. "Her life was consistent," Evelyn said. "She told you she hurt. You told her to smile for the cameras." The PR manager interjected weakly. "Ma'am, perhaps this conversation could be framed more constructively. The press is already—" Evelyn turned her gaze on him, and the sentence died mid-air. "This isn't about the press," she said coldly. "It's about the pattern. Every institution in this city, hotels, hospitals, corporations, has learned to whisper pain away. You call it discretion, reputation management, client experience. I call it cowardice. The hotel director cleared his throat. Mrs. Cho, our protocol was followed precisely. We couldn't escalate a medical situation without consent. It's policy. Evelyn leaned forward. Then your policy is broken. Behind her, standing quietly near the wall, was Michael Reyes. He hadn't wanted to come, but Evelyn had insisted. You were the only one who spoke the truth last night, she told him. You should hear how they try to bury it. Now he watched her with a quiet awe. The woman who had once ruled boardrooms with a gloved hand was tearing down the very world she'd built her name on. Dr. Lang tried again, this time defensively. With respect, my choices were guided by experience, not negligence. Michael finally spoke, voice low but steady. Experience isn't a shield when it blinds you. You looked at a child, not a chart, and saw inconvenience instead of emergency. The doctor's jaw tightened. You're not a physician, Mr. Reyes. No, Michael said softly. I'm the reason she's still alive. The room went still. Evelyn turned toward the window. The city spread beneath her like a mirror of her own contradictions. Gleaming, restless, self-deceived. She exhaled slowly. I built an empire on data, forecasts, and algorithms. I trusted machines more than instincts. And yet a man who mops my floors saw what you, all of you, refused to see. Because he still remembers what pain looks like. Her words fell like stones in water, each one rippling wider. The hotel director cleared his throat again. Mrs. Cho, may I ask, what is it you want from us? Evelyn's eyes lifted, clear and sharp. Change. She rose, crossing to the whiteboard at the end of the room. With a marker, she wrote in bold letters, Medical escalation overrides VIP privacy. Then below it, training. Staff to recognize silent distress in children. Accountability. Any delay in reporting, immediate review. She turned to the hotel manager. I will fund the entire program, and not just here, every hotel my company partners with. From tonight forward, silence will have a cost. The manager nodded, pale. Of course, Mrs. Cho, immediately. Evelyn looked to Dr. Lang. And you. You'll receive my foundation's full investigation into pediatric misdiagnosis rates. If you cooperate, you'll help fix what you almost broke. If not, Dr. Lang swallowed. Understood. She set the marker down, her voice softening for the first time. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Be afraid of pretending they're not yours. After the meeting, the room emptied, except for Michael. He stood by the window, watching the Hudson shimmer below. That was something, he said quietly. Evelyn let out a small, tired laugh. I'm better at firing people than forgiving them. He shook his head. No, you didn't fire anyone. You woke them up. She turned toward him. And what about you, Mr. Reyes? Who wakes you up? He smiled faintly. A 9-year-old with a heart monitor and a bedtime promise. Evelyn's eyes softened. Sophia? Yeah. Every night she asks, Daddy, who did you help today? He looked down, his voice almost breaking. Last night, I finally had an answer. They stood in silence for a while, the city below them roaring with life. Horns, sirens, conversations. But up here, everything felt still. Evelyn looked at him, eyes bright but calm. When Arya wakes, I want her to meet Sophia. I think they'd like each other. Michael blinked, surprised. You're serious? deadly. She smiled. They both have brave fathers. Later that afternoon, Evelyn returned to Arya's bedside. The girl stirred, smiling faintly when she saw her mother. "Mommy?" "Yes, baby." "Is it morning again?" Evelyn brushed her hair back. "It's a new kind of morning." Arya's lips curved. "Did the janitor go home?" Evelyn smiled softly. "Not yet. He's helping me fix a few things first." Across the hall, Michael closed his notebook and watched the sunlight crawl across the tiles. His reflection shimmered faintly in the glass. Not the invisible man anymore, not the man haunted by one lost call, but someone who had given meaning back to his silence. He whispered to himself, "Appendix doesn't care about your address." Then he smiled, because for the first time, someone in power had listened. When someone finally sees you, it's not light that enters, it's worth. 2 weeks later, the sun rose over Manhattan in molten gold, glinting off glass towers that had already forgotten the story on the 58th floor. But one person hadn't. Evelyn Cho, back in her downtown office, stared at a single photo on her desk. Arya in a hospital gown, laughing with a small brown-haired girl in a red hoodie. The caption read, "Sophia and Arya, St. Catherine's Day Room." She smiled quietly. The two had become inseparable since the surgery, and in their laughter, Evelyn had found a truth no business deal ever gave her. Some connections were built not by contracts, but by courage. Across the city, in a modest apartment in Queens, Michael Reyes packed Sophia's school lunch. Apple slices, a peanut butter sandwich, and the usual post-it note that read, "Be brave. The world needs your kindness today." Sophia grinned, slipping the note into her pocket. "You say that like you're sending me to war." He laughed. "The cafeteria counts as one." "Are you going to the fancy building again?" she asked, eyes bright. He hesitated. "Maybe. Mrs. Cho wants to talk about a new job." Sophia gasped. "Like, cleaning for billionaires again?" Michael smiled. "No, kiddo. Something a little different this time." That afternoon, the elevator in Cho Global Headquarters opened to reveal the same man who once polished its floor. But today, Michael wore a crisp shirt, his name badge reading Michael Reyes, Emergency Response Coordinator. He still carried the same worn notebook in his pocket, pages creased, ink smudged, his silent promise to never stop noticing what others ignored. Evelyn met him in the boardroom. No chandeliers, no champagne, just a table, 2 coffees, and the skyline behind them. "You look different up here," she said, smiling. "Feels strange being allowed to stand this high without a mop," he replied. She laughed softly. "You earned higher ground." Michael glanced at the documents on the table. "You sure about this? I'm not an executive. I don't have a degree." Evelyn leaned forward. "You have something rarer. The ability to speak when everyone else stays silent. That's what this department needs." She slid a folder toward him. Inside was a proposal titled, "The Silent Signs Initiative. Training luxury industry staff to recognize medical distress, starting with all hotels partnered under Cho Global's philanthropy arm." Michael looked up, speechless. "I want you to lead it," she said simply. "Your experience, your story, your way of seeing." He blinked. "You mean, hire me?" "No," she corrected gently. "Work with me." For a moment he couldn't speak. All those years of being unseen, unthanked, uncounted, suddenly rewritten by a single act of recognition. Finally, he said quietly, "All right, but I'm keeping my old title too." She tilted her head. Janitor? He grinned. Listener. Later that week, Sophia and Arya met again. This time not in a hospital, but at the rooftop garden of Cho Global. The wind tugged at their hair as they sat on a bench, 2 teddy bears between them, the same kind the hospital had given out to pediatric patients. Evelyn and Michael stood a few feet away, watching. Funny, he said. They met in a place where people almost died pretending everything was fine. And now look at them. Evelyn nodded, eyes soft. Children heal faster because they don't pretend. Michael looked at her sideways. You could write that on a building. She smiled faintly. Maybe I will. A notification buzzed on her phone. The Aurelia Sky Lounge had just posted its new policy online, one she had personally ordered to be engraved into every staff manual. Medical escalation overrides VIP privacy. If someone is in pain, the only rule that matters is action. Thousands of comments were flooding in. Parents, doctors, even hotel workers from around the world thanking her for the change. But Evelyn turned the phone face down. Her eyes were on the children instead. Do you know what you did, Michael? She asked. He shook his head. I cleaned up another mess. She smiled. You rewrote what power means. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. As the sun dipped behind the Hudson, the rooftop lights flickered on, soft amber halos that caught the dust in the air like floating gold. Sophia leaned against her father's arm, Arya against her mother's. The 2 girls were comparing their teddy bears, whispering secrets that only children and angels could understand. Evelyn whispered, It feels strange. Peace. After so much noise. Michael nodded slowly. Maybe that's what healing sounds like. The city glowed below them, vast, imperfect, still alive. And in that glow, 4 people sat quietly, bound not by status or gratitude, but by something gentler, shared humanity. Before they left, Evelyn reached into her bag and handed Michael a small box. Inside was a digital tablet with a single file open, a scanned version of his notebook. I had my tech team digitize your notes, she said. Every symptom, every story. We'll use it to train thousands. I called it the Reyes Manual. Michael's eyes misted. He touched the screen gently. You didn't have to. I did, she interrupted softly. Because every empire should start with someone who knows what pain looks like. He smiled, closing the box. Then maybe it'll be a better empire this time. Evelyn met his gaze. It already is. And as they walked toward the elevator, the same one where their worlds had first collided, the reflection in the steel doors showed not a janitor and a billionaire, but 2 people who had finally learned how to see. The world doesn't shift when a crowd screams. It shifts when one person refuses to stay silent. 6 months later, the skyline of New York City glimmered under early spring rain. Drops ran down glass towers like veins, each carrying a reflection of light, of noise, of change, the kind that begins quietly, one decision at a time. At the Aurora Crown Hotel, where the story had begun, a new plaque hung beside the grand marble elevator, in memory of a night when someone dared to speak. Medical escalation overrides VIP privacy. If you see suffering, act. Below it was a smaller line, simple and steady. Michael Reyes, former janitor, emergency response coordinator. Guests paused when they read it. Some smiled, some frowned, some simply looked away. But none could say they hadn't been warned. Inside a conference hall 20 floors above, the Silent Signs Initiative had become real. Banners lined the walls, showing workers from hotels, airlines, and restaurants gathered for training sessions, learning how to recognize the quiet emergencies that often go unseen. A faint hand tremor, a half-swallowed cry, a look of pain mistaken for shyness. At the front of the room stood Michael, in a pressed white shirt, his voice carrying through the hum of conversation. "People think saving lives takes genius," he said, tapping the microphone lightly. "It doesn't. It takes attention." He paused, looking at their faces. Managers, servers, concierges, even janitors like he once was. "You don't need a medical degree to notice when someone's not okay," he continued. "You just need to care enough to risk being wrong." In the crowd, Evelyn sat in the front row, her expression proud but quiet. Behind her, a news crew filmed the training for a segment titled, "From Rooftop Scandal to Global Policy." But what cameras didn't capture was the look between them, two people who'd once met in chaos, now building something that might outlive them both. That evening, after the event, Evelyn found Michael alone on the balcony overlooking the river. The city shimmered below them, endless, breathing, alive. "You spoke well," she said softly. He smiled. "I still don't like microphones." She laughed. "You didn't need one last time either." He looked out at the skyline. "Do you ever think about that night?" "Every time I see a child smile," she said. "Every time someone pauses before saying, 'It's probably nothing.'" They stood in silence for a moment, rain misting their hair, the kind of silence that no longer hurt, the kind that healed. Downstairs, in the hotel lobby, Aria and Sophia played beside the new bronze plaque. Their teddy bears, once symbols of fear, were now badges of survival. A hotel concierge smiled as he watched them. Sophia looked up. "That's my daddy's name." The concierge nodded. "He's the reason we all have emergency training now." Aria grinned. "And my mommy helped too." "Looks like both of you did," the man said gently. "You made the world a little braver." The girls giggled and ran toward the window, pressing their palms to the glass. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through, catching in the puddles like melted gold. Later, as Evelyn and Michael prepared to leave, a reporter caught up to them in the lobby. "Mr. Reyes," she asked, "how does it feel to go from janitor to hero?" He smiled faintly, shaking his head. "I was never a hero. I just didn't stay quiet." The reporter turned to Evelyn. "And you, Ms. Cho? What made you listen to him that night?" Evelyn's gaze drifted toward Aria and Sophia, chasing light across the floor. "Because for once, I remembered what my mother told me. Power means nothing if you can't hear the small voices." She paused, then added, "That night, the smallest voice was my daughter's pain, and the only one who truly heard it was him." Weeks later, the Silent Signs curriculum was adopted by 20 major hotel chains and 2 airline networks. Articles called it the Reyes Protocol. But Michael refused interviews. He said the story belonged to the people who'd changed their habits, not the one who started them. Instead, he went home to Queens each night, to Sophia, to their little apartment filled with warmth and secondhand furniture, to the life that had always been enough. Sometimes, after dinner, he'd open his worn blue notebook and add a few more lines. April 2nd, new staff trained at Aurora Crown. No emergencies tonight. Maybe that's the point. He'd smile, close the book, and whisper the same bedtime ritual as always. "How much do you love me, Dad?" "More than every light in New York tonight." One Friday evening, 6 months to the day since the rooftop, Evelyn and Aria visited them in Queens. The 2 girls ran into the courtyard, their laughter filling the air. Evelyn handed Michael an envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Him holding Aria's hand on the hospital elevator, both faces lit by the siren's red glow. "I found this in the security footage," she said. "The night you wouldn't let her die quietly." Michael studied the picture. "You kept it?" "I kept it," she said softly, "because it reminds me what courage looks like when no one's watching." He smiled. "Then keep it. That night belonged to you both." She shook her head, slipping the photo into his pocket. "No, Michael. That night belonged to the world." As the sky darkened, they all sat together on a worn wooden bench, the same kind found in every park, every hospital hallway, every quiet corner where stories like theirs begin. The city hummed around them. Cars, trains, music. But above it all was a peace that didn't need to be named. Michael looked at Evelyn, then at the children playing under the streetlights and said, "Funny, isn't it? All it took was one voice." Evelyn smiled. One voice, and one man who remembered what it meant to listen. He nodded slowly, gazing at the glow over the skyline. "Maybe that's how every system changes," he whispered. "One person, one truth, one heartbeat at a time." The wind rose gently, carrying the laughter of two children into the night, and for the first time in years, Michael felt completely weightless. Not because the world had changed, but because he finally believed it could.